So welcome everyone to today's webcast. Is 2017 the year to finally up-level your PMO? My name is Ben Chamberlain. I'm UMT360's Chief Product Officer. And during today's session, we're really going to take a look at how to move your PMO from maybe an execution-oriented function to a function focused on truly delivering business value to potentially a function that is able to help an organization orchestrate business transformation. During today's session, we're actually going to take a high-level look at a framework that the UMT360 consulting team uses, something we call the VIC framework, to help pinpoint where an organization is within their PPM maturity and build roadmaps to take them through the continuum that we'll look at today, from execution-oriented to value-driven to potentially being able to manage all enterprise investments and orchestrate business transformation. During the session, we will take a look at what's wrong with PPM, why adopting a new mindset of PMO is critical. And then we will take a look at the VIC framework and dive into 4 of the capabilities to give you a sense for how our team would evaluate an organization and recommend moving them through that maturity continuum. Not time today to look at the whole framework, but just to give you a sense for how to visualize and build a roadmap to evolve your PMO. So just a quick one on sort of housekeeping. We will be running some polls during the session today, so please participate in those. And we will also pause at the end for a Q&A, so please use the Q&A manager to post questions, and I will get to them at the end of today's session. So let's jump in. If you've followed any of the presentations, sometimes when we're talking about PMO, we lead off with this one. This is something I took from Gartner, where basically executives in organizations was asked a pretty simple question. Is your PMO viewed as a value-generating function? It's pretty equal in the responses. So maybe starting negative, moving to positive. The PMO is a useful administrative support function was one of the options. While the PMO has some value, respondents described them as bureaucratic at best, whereas only a third said the PMO is an integral part of getting things done, whatever that means. So obviously there still remains a perception issue. So why is that? I think that the primary reason that is traditional PPM is broken or really didn't deliver on the promise that many executives thought when they funded these initiatives. I think the stats are fairly well understood on the right-hand side here, whether it's Standish Group saying 18% of projects fail to get implemented, 43% of projects come in late or over budget, something they call challenge. Gartner, 1 out of 3 projects experience significant cost overruns. And even the PMI saying that 33% of projects do not meet their intended goals. Now, we've done a lot of research in this area, and we've been in this space longer than I care to remember. And what our own research shows is today there is a risk that organizations are losing around 46% of the planned business value from investments in their project and program portfolios. So in other words, 50% of the value is at risk. Now, without getting too deep into this, there are a bunch of contributing factors that lead to that business value erosion. And again, I'm not going to get as deep into this slide as I normally would, but inefficiency tends to be the big one. Too many manual processes, disconnected systems and data, meaning you've got to really manually bring information together, which slows a PMO down in terms of not having information at their fingertips, being able to make quicker, better, faster decisions. We are going to spend a bit of time today looking at unreliable planning. Often today organizations have unreliable planning techniques, which really means they're investing in the wrong projects and reducing their ability to drive value from the investment. And we'll look at portfolio management as one of the capabilities that we'll dive into today, and we'll touch on different planning techniques. Now, when I think about treating projects from a value perspective as a business investment, financial information needs to become a first-class citizen. And without really managing the business side or the financial side of these projects, there is a danger that you will be losing value. I'm not going to get too deep into that today, but raising the importance of financial information is key. Resource management or resource utilization continues to be a problem, has probably been the major problem in in project and portfolio management for years, but continues to be a problem, whether it's offshore, outsourcing, the advent of now sort of bimodal and needing to balance both agile and traditional ways of working. The goalposts keep changing, and that causes problems. Many organizations today don't have really the metrics they need to even track value. How well is the PMO performing? Have you established a benefits realization process even to confirm that you achieve the value that you set out to do? And probably one of the abstract things here, disconnected portfolios, and thing we'll touch on a little later in the presentation, it's really acknowledging the fact that we're not just managing projects and programs, that in fact these investments are funded to make changes to other things in the organization. So seeing the whole connected organization helps you do a better job of driving value and choosing the right investments. And you'll see how that plays out a little later. Something we've been preaching a lot about over the years, it really is time for a PMO to adopt a new mindset, move from the tactical to more of a strategic way of working. And I think that's one of the primary problems here. Many PMOs today still see themselves more in a kind of execution-orientated mode. Just really their success is based on the on-time delivery of the projects under their watch, and really focus on more of the tactical but still very important things: schedule management, resource management, status reporting, templates, governance. I'm not underestimating the importance of these activities. They remain as important today as they did yesterday. All I'm simply saying is, as we start to be more proactive in how we manage our projects and program portfolios, we have to recognize that at their core they are business investments, there to drive revenue, reduce costs, align with different compliance mandates, and we need to treat them as such. And the PMO needs to become more strategic, almost like the CFO or COO of their project portfolios, taking responsibility for capital stewardship and budgeting, business value management, business transformation, costs, benefits, risks, the list goes on. So it's true that I think PMO has a fairly daunting task today. Have to be comfortable wearing both hats, both the kind of masters of execution as the PMI or even the Agile community would start to define things, but also, as I say, becoming familiar being more business-minded and the CFO of project and program portfolios. So with that, we're into our first poll. And so the poll here, the question is, how does your executive team perceive your PMO? So let's just rate the perceptions here. So I actually added to that list you saw earlier. So the first, a useful administrative support function for PMs. Second, responsible for project execution and delivery. Responsible for optimizing business value through project delivery, so looking at value side as well as the execution side. And an indispensable help to truly orchestrate business transformation. Now, we haven't spent too much time talking about that yet, but for those of you that understand the sort of Gartner terminology around business transformation, building a digital business, you may place yourself there. So, useful administrative function, responsible for project execution delivery only, responsible for value generation through the successful execution of projects, or indispensable function around orchestrating business transformation. 5 more seconds and we will close the poll. So the results of the poll, not surprised with 46 and 30 on the first two, so 76% basically saying either an administrative function or really just responsible for the execution-oriented mindset, which is where the PMO's been for 4 years. So no real surprise there. Good to see 14% coming through with more value focus. We're going to get deeper into that. And 11% indispensable for orchestrating business transformation, although I didn't provide an overview of what that is yet, but that's great to great to see. So let's move on even. Next part of today's session is to peel back the layers of the UMT360, what we call VIC framework, stands for Visibility, Insight, and Connect. And this is basically a framework that we've taken about 20 years worth of customer practical real-world experiences and built a framework that helps guide a function managing projects, a PMO, whatever you want to call it, from more of an execution-oriented tactical mindset into a discipline that's able to orchestrate and manage all enterprise investments or orchestrate business transformation. There are 3 levels in VIC. We're looking at level 1 here, and we'll drill down into 2 in a second, then we'll spend a little bit of time looking at level 3 and some of the underlying capabilities. So at 100,000 foot, it's 3 steps: visibility, insight, and connect. What does it mean? In visibility, it's about let's quickly establish the foundational controls we need to get visibility across projects. In insight, it goes back to becoming the CFO of the project portfolio. Let's start to really recognize these things, projects and programs, as business investments and garner both the financial and strategic insights needed to make quicker, better, faster decisions. Now, for many PMOs or people in PPM, they think of that as kind of nirvana or where the end point of that journey is, but it's simply not true. You have to recognize the fact that projects and programs are not created in a vacuum, that they're funded to make a transformational change to something else in the organization, whether that's to change a business capability or process, retire an IT asset or application or piece of technology, launch a product. We have to understand these broader enterprise portfolio connections and in turn start to apply portfolio thinking and techniques to managing these other enterprise portfolios. And having done that, we build a dynamic blueprint of the whole operating fabric of our business where we're able to orchestrate and manage all expenditure, both operational activity and spend, discretionary activity and spend. So very 3 high level, but very 3 important steps that you'll see play out throughout this framework. So now we drill down to level 2 within this framework. And you'll start to see level 2 capabilities play out across the 3 steps of visibility, insight, and connect. Now, a lot of these capabilities are the core tenets that PPM have been sold on for a while: portfolio governance, demand management, portfolio management, resource management, cost management, schedule management, BI reporting, time, status reporting. You can read this as well as I can. Program management, team collaboration. And the truth is they incrementally build as you move through the steps of visibility, insight, and connect. And we're going to take a look at 4 of these capabilities today to see some of the things that our team will look for you to achieve in different areas or in different capabilities based on the 3 steps of visibility, insight, and connect. But they build based on what I said before: visibility, let's get the foundational controls to get visibility across projects; insight, let's garner both the strategic and financial insights needed to make quicker, better, faster decisions. And as you see, connect, we start to bring in these other enterprise portfolios, and these are just sort of representative. There could be others: management of business capabilities, IT, technology portfolios, products, service portfolios, any, quite honestly, asset that you may be, business or IT asset that you may be investing in. Also, the ability to sort of bring to bear things like integrated ecosystem, meaning how do we make our PPM tool set and capability integrated with the other important line of business systems or information needs to be shared. Remember, going back to one of those first problems that were resulting in that 46% of value erosion was disconnected systems and information, and how that sort of paralyzes many organizations. So this is level 2 of this model. Like I say, we're not going to explore every single one of these. We kind of randomly, to a degree, picked 4 that we thought might be of interest. So we're going to start looking at how to improve your portfolio management capabilities and how that plays out along this continuum of visibility, insight, and connect. Demand management, resource management, and schedule management and roadmaps. We're going to approach them in that order. Now, it's fair to say I'm actually going to go a little bit deeper into portfolio management just because it kind of sets the scene for how the other capabilities are positioned on the three-step model. But this is not meant to be, a comprehensive overview of each of these things. It's meant to be an example of how we see our customers maturing over time, and how we would conduct both an envisioning assessment to pinpoint where you are today, and use that information to systematically build roadmaps to where you want to get to tomorrow. There is no one-size-fits-all rule here. These roadmaps are built based on your unique requirements and what you want to achieve. In fact, something that the Gartner PPM team like about this model is that it isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, and it's very flexible. There's nothing stopping you drawing down and picking capabilities from insight before visibility. So it's not like you have to graduate, spend 2 years to get out of visibility before you can get a pat on the back and a badge and move into insight and into connect. It just doesn't work that way, and I'll talk more about that. So let's move on. First capability we're going to spend a deep dive in. Remember I said there were 3 levels, level 1, level 2, and now we're looking at one capability, but the expansion of the level 3 sort of sub-functions that reside within portfolio management. And we're going to spend a bit of time today talking about different planning approaches. The first one, which plays out in visibility, which is used more for in kind of annual planning process, is something we call a project-driven investment approach, and I'll go into that into more detail. As you move into insight and look to better generate demand from strategy, there's a program-driven investment planning approach. You may also want to be looking at moving from that kind of annual planning cadence where you select projects for the year, pin your ears back and deliver on them come hell or high water, into a more dynamic, agile portfolio management process, a continuous planning process where you're continuously rebalancing the portfolio through the year. It's another key area of insight. And as we move into a more connected enterprise, how to really drive top-down planning through business capability-driven planning frameworks, and also the ability at a high level to provide portfolio techniques to managing other portfolios within our enterprise portfolio model. Now, I know that doesn't provide too much insight, but we're going to drive it a little deeper first into 2 areas. I'm just going to look at 3 different planning approaches, which I laid out through VI and C there. And then we're going to take a very high-level look at more of the agile portfolio management dynamic planning framework. So the project-driven investment approach, so these are the 3 investment approaches I was just talking about: project-driven, program-driven, capability-driven. There is an obvious step up in maturity as you move left to right here, and obviously these 3 things align with each with visibility, insight, and connect. The project-driven investment approach is probably the most common today when an organization doesn't have the kind of first-come, first-serve approach to selecting projects. It's one where strategy is defined and prioritized with the executive team, often in a silo. And then you hit that sort of planning cadence in the year, and suddenly everyone starts throwing ideas and requests into a hopper, building out business cases, and as part of that, doing an impact assessment into how these potential requests or investments align with the strategy, and use then semi-sophisticated techniques to optimize and select the best portfolio under different cost and human resource constraints. So it's a very good framework. It's actually a framework we came up with 20 years ago. We saw it as truly top-down back then. The truth is, based on the fact that strategy is defined and prioritized in a silo, project requests are captured, disconnected from the strategy, and then analyzed against the strategy. It's more of a bottom-up way of working. And the overarching frailty of this approach, although it does still have a lot of positives, is that you were never quite sure whether you started out with the right projects. You definitely know you selected the best of whatever was teed up, but did you have the optimal demand in the first place? And in simplistic terms, program-driven and capability-driven look to overcome that one primary frailty. Is how do we generate demand, regardless of when we do it, that is totally aligned with the strategic priorities, strategic objectives of our organization. And the program-driven investment approach starts with strategy, breaks down into programs, then down into the execution itself, the underlying projects. Now, this approach is, I see this almost like a generic drug to a degree, because there's lots of different planning techniques that follow this structure. balanced scorecard, Hoshin planning, even SAFE to a degree, of breaking down the investments in this way. So in this model, what's key is programs are much more than just reporting veneer on top of projects. They are, in fact, actual investment entities, things you fund, things you analyze, things you reallocate funds, and provide a natural bridge between the strategic objectives, outcomes, and the execution themselves. So next slide shows a kind of example of how that sort of process looks like, objectives into strategy, into these key programs, down into the execution, regardless of what type of execution, be it traditional, waterfall, agile, iterative, back of the napkin stuff. Work management, so it doesn't really matter. These programs provide a natural hub for you to bring things together and then look at business investment and reallocation decisions at that level. And again, funding, headcount, other things can be applied at any level within these models. So that falls part of insight and is a high-level overview of program-driven planning. As we move into capability-driven planning, which is part of Connect, now we introduce the concept of business capabilities. Business capabilities represent the operating fabric of our business, the key operating functions. They are basically what the business runs on, broken down by people, process, and technology. By doing an assessment of our strategy or a mapping of our strategy into our capabilities, we can use that analysis to generate demand, programs, and projects. If I have a strategy that has no capability supporting it, in other words, no ability for me to execute on that strategy, I may onboard a new capability into my capability portfolio through a program. If I have a strategy that's dependent on poor performing business capabilities, again, I'm going to make investment decisions to enhance the performance of those capabilities to knock that strategy or strategies out of the park. Again, generating programs and projects. The other beauty of this model is that you can start to decompose capabilities based on all the facets, such as technology and other things. So here in this simplistic overview here, we start to see break a capability down by applications, technology, services, however you decompose your IT landscape. The benefit of that, as an IT professional, I'm able to engage the business in fundamental changes they need, to the business capabilities, and align the technology roadmap, IT investments such as projects or changes to the current state versus future state architecture of IT, aligning to those key capabilities, and you have the traceability back down because you understand the supporting apps, the supporting technology, the supporting services that are automating those capabilities. It's a more connected model, hence sitting in Connect. An example of how this works is you may have a bunch of strategies here. It's an insurance example. One of them, reduce loss ratio by settling claims quickly. You start to look at your level 1 capability of managed claims. You drill down into lower level sub-capabilities within managed claims, realizing that you may want to investigate, process and investigate claims and settle claims as two areas that could help you deliver on that strategic imperative. You may drill down further and understand that based on that, these applications are supporting those particular sub-capabilities, and then generate investments that improve everything related to that capability to deliver on the strategic imperative that was defined in the first place. A very connected model, one that provides a clear line of sight all the way from strategy through all types of execution, operational activity and spend, discretionary activity and spend. Another way of looking at this, and again this is from the Gartner playbook, a segmentation approach called pace layering that can be applied at the capability level. You see strategy and the capabilities into different types of projects. Two things that are important here. As organizations are moving to this capability-driven investment approach, which many are, you can start to actually apply funding, allocate teams at the capability level, specialist teams with knowledge of those capabilities and processes. The PACE layer is basically something where you segment and classify capabilities, systems of record, systems of differentiation, systems of innovation, and based on that classification, it actually is going to infer an execution cadence. Systems of innovation may be very, very frequent, weekly releases, obviously mostly agile. Systems of differentiation may be every 3-6 months releases, both a sort of incremental build and iterative build. And then these sort of systems of record, big financial systems, whatever they may be, they may follow more of the traditional waterfall approach. So again, it does give you the ability to bring together something that many organizations struggle with today, which is the bimodal reality of executing different types of projects. So we're done with the investment planning approaches. Poll number 2, which planning approach does your organization use today? This was an easy one for us to run simply because obviously there was a one-to-one affinity or mapping between the planning approach and steps in the VIC framework. So project-driven, program-driven, capability-driven, none of the above. None of the above, I guess, means Wild West or first come, first serve. Good, so 2 more seconds and then we'll share the results. So, which are we using today? Project-driven, program-driven, capability, none of the above. So 45% using project-driven. That's great. That is good, especially because when we've done deep dive presentations on these planning approaches with specific reference to things like project-driven, actually a more deeper overview of project-driven, often I get people saying that there's far more than just sort of 3% or what it is, 5% that are relying on kind of the ad hoc, first come, first serve, or none of the above. Program-driven, 37%. That is hugely encouraging too. Quite honestly, when I speak with organizations, one of the benefits of my job is speaking with different customers week in, week out. Most organizations today are sort of somewhere between project-driven and program-driven, which I think is reflective of this poll here. And 13% the capability-driven model. I think it was 11% that were orchestrating business transformation on the last poll, and now 13% capability-driven investment approach, which, quite honestly, you can also orchestrate business transformation without, starting to implement, more of a connected model that the capability-driven framework or approach provides. Now, the next poll, I almost stole my own thunder there, but I think there is another poll. Yeah, so another poll. Which planning approach does your organization plan to use? So not what are you using today? When you think directionally of where you're going, so if you're a project-driven, are you going to go to program-driven or capability-driven? Where do you see your organization, or how do you see your organization evolving its planning approaches over the next 2 to 5 years? Going to stay in project-driven, move more holistically to a program-driven approach, into a capability-driven investment approach, or just boycott the whole thing and stay away from it? All right, a couple more seconds and we'll go from there. Okay, let's share the results. So 10% remaining firmly in project-driven, or maybe that's at least 3% came out of probably none of the above to project-driven. A little bit more in program-driven. Very encouraged to see the capability-driven investment approach. Actually, 2 to 5 years. I mean, I think that's a little lighter than what I would expect. Normally, I find today that most organizations I speak with, there are pockets of the organization, certainly business architecture, enterprise architecture, strategic planning, that already have this model in mind. But obviously, it's a different thing to have it operating in a silo for it being completely pervasive across the business. But directionally, I would say in the conversations I'm having, I would say 80% of the time customers are looking to get there. But the reality is about capability-driven investment approach is actually it is a superset of everything. It's actually something that's still called the program-driven approach baked in. It still is and has better mechanisms for dealing with the project-driven investment approach, which basically is the generation of bottom-up demand and allowing you to evaluate that. So it is a superset of all three. So next, the other part of insight in planning, we talked about moving from annual planning, which was visibility, into more of an agile or dynamic planning framework. Again, not going to spend a lot of time here, but this tends to be something that many organizations are doing today manually or looking to industrialize. So how do you move into more of a continuous planning framework where monthly, more often quarterly, you're rebalancing the portfolio? Pretty simple. You start with allocated funds, headcounts, and a set of projects, and then things change throughout the year. And how do you react to those changes? Some projects don't require all the funds due to poor estimation. So how do you generate a forecasting culture to release money quickly and people quickly from these projects, and then make a decision, should I give more money to the existing projects and more people to the existing projects that require more, or when should I bring in net new with the intention of optimizing resource utilization and spend and maximizing both the value and yield, strategic yield you get from the portfolio. So this is a process, again, that many organizations are kind of doing manually through steering committee reviews, but being able to really bring that together and move to that continuous planning framework tends to be top of mind for a lot of PMOs that we're speaking with today. My still preferred model is a hybrid approach, one that blends, the time needed to do a multi-year annual plan, but then having the agility of being able to adjust course through this dynamic planning process. So I think it's going to be the last poll of the day, although we still have a bunch of slides to get through. What best describes your planning cadence in your organization? So first come, first serve. Annual planning process, probably that project-driven approach. So many of you already signed up for that one. Or the agile dynamic planning process that I just spent a very little time going through. Or the hybrid approach, blending the sort of annual to go deeper look at what should be achieved, and the agile approach or dynamic planning approach of making adjustments throughout the year. Now remember, annual planning very much squarely placed in visibility, agile in insight in the model that we're looking at. And then obviously hybrid is also achieved as you get into insight. We can share the poll, I think. 10% on the Wild West, first come, first serve. Annual planning process, 51%. 8% purely relying on the agile process, which is good. And even more encouraging to me is as I said, my preferred model of 31% of blending the best of both worlds for the hybrid model. So, but very encouraging to see. Okay, so let's go back and move on. Okay, so I'm going to pick up the pace a little bit now. As I said, I wanted to go deeper into the portfolio management piece, really because I think it sets the tone for the model, and you'll see how that plays out a little bit here too. Next area we're going to look at was demand management. What is demand management? How to consolidate and bring in all requests from across the organization so you have complete transparency, able to undertake capacity analysis and various other things. So how does this play out, and what are the capabilities our team will look for to ensure you'll have a stellar function of demand management or capability and visibility, insight, and connect? So in visibility, it really is about standardizing that intake process. It's about having different templates set up so you can capture requests for different types of projects. In fact, the overarching theme here is we want to consolidate as much information as we can within whatever tool set is being utilized. I want the information to be governable and instantly reportable. And to that end, I don't want it hanging out in a Word document as a project chart or an Excel template housed in a document repository as a cost-benefit analysis. I want the information captured within the system so it can be governed. We know what information should be completed at which stage and if it has been completed or not. And then I'll generate other documents. But you want to make sure that you're capturing enough information in a centralized, consolidated tool set to support decision making. It doesn't have to be everything, but enough to support decisions. So standardizing intake and templates for project demand, bringing in cost and benefit assessments into the tool, making financial information a first-class citizen right from the get-go within your project business case. Looking at top-down techniques of estimating resource, whether it's at resource estimates or resource demand, whether it's at the role level, the individual level, team level, whatever it may be, but capturing that in the tool. Looking at prioritization scores and metrics to help you support, whether it's strategic value scores like I described earlier in terms of mapping into business strategy, whether it's other scores, risk, financial metrics, whatever it is, but looking to automate and be able to track the changes to these scores through time. May not be ready for full project schedules at this stage, although they can be standardized, and we'll look at schedule management a little later. But at least being able to capture milestones and track the sort of cursory high-level potential timeline and key dates for a project. As part of the governance as well, being able to have the appropriate governance controls, approval notifications, and authorities set up to approve projects through the early stages of their life or the business case. So those are some of the things that we'd look for to say that you're performing well within where we see the visibility stage from demand management. As we move into insight, and you'll see how this sort of ties back to the portfolio management, this is where we're going to start to look for really the projects to start to be generated from that top-down program-driven approach. So strategy, programs, then projects. We're going to be treating programs as independent investment entities in their own right. You're going to have a program business case. You're going to consolidate and have governance at that level too. We are now going to start to look and generate the projects from the programs and maintain these hard linkages between the projects and programs, being able to govern at either level, manage them independently but collectively. So they're both physical living, breathing entities versus just having a metadata field within a project saying it belongs to this program. No, we want to be able to move information between these two objects. And another area, because we're starting to get, and this will come up in more of the resource management, we're starting to want to get a full perspective or a 360 view across all work. Let's set up the structures to go beyond just consolidating and managing projects as part of demand, but also how we look at managing non-project activities and capturing that information early on from a planning perspective and potentially even from a tracking perspective. So these are sort of things that we'll look in insight as you start to evolve that demand management capability. And again, no surprise as we get into Connect, how does demand management evolve going back to that portfolio model that we looked at earlier. Now, we expect projects and programs to be generated from the analysis of other portfolios, capability portfolios, changes to technology roadmaps, other things. These things are coming from decisions made on other enterprise portfolios. And in turn, when we initiate a project, we want the ability not just to understand project-program relationships, we want the ability to understand far more than that. This project impacts these applications tied to this program, draws down from this or is impacting this capability, and so on. So again, gives you a feel for some of the things that our team will look for as we want to mature the demand management capability across this continuum. Let's take a look at resource management now. Again, not going to spend too much time here, But in visibility, what are some of the key tenets? Establishing the foundation that we need to get visibility across projects. Of course, it all starts with the formation and definition of that enterprise resource pool. Different types of resources, synced with Active Directory, roles, not just individual name resources, but roles that you want to standardize in the organization, key rates, other things, how you bring in working and non-working time into different enterprise calendars to help drive, obviously, capacity. Simple ways of resource estimating and forecasting, being able to really do that either in a top-down manner at the project level, or of course fully integrated with a bottom-up schedule. Different techniques around resource requisition, whether it's the PM going hunting for a resource that has availability, or whether it is in fact more of a governed process where there's a handshake between the project manager and the resource manager in terms of allocating a resource for a defined period of time to a project. Tracking resources, and there's a whole time-sheeting capability, I'm not going to get into that. Introduction of resource rates, even if it's just at the blended level at this time, goes back to the definition of enterprise resource pool. And maybe we don't have all the information or sophistication visibility to run sort of scenario analysis from a capacity perspective, but we can certainly get visibility and generate reports to look at the highs and lows, peaks and troughs based on resource capacity and demand at the named level, and also at the role level. As we move into insight, now we've brought in both project activity and non-project activity, remember, in demand management. So we now start to get a fuller picture of our capacity. We start to onboard more sophisticated capacity planning analysis techniques, something that didn't make it left to the cutting room floor here. Now we also have the ability to manage both agile and traditional teams in unison as well. Moving from sort of role management into skills management. Individuals can have different skills. How do we cater to that? Help us to find the right person for the right job. Capitalization of resources. How do we automate that process? Many organizations struggle with resource rates and security around rates, so actually having the actual rate of resource but securing that. These are all the areas that we'll look at here. And as you move into Connect, this more expansive enterprise portfolio model, going back to that sort of pace layer slide I had, this is where you can start to allocate teams at different levels within that portfolio model, dedicated teams allocated to, let's say, a capability, specialized teams allocated capability, or even looking now at things like run, grow, transform mix of how we're utilizing resources. So again, not going too deep here, but how we would position some of the key things for resource management. The last one we're going to look at today is schedule management and roadmaps, which in essence are macro schedules. So how does that break down? In visibility, again, foundational controls. Let's standardize the best practice templates for managing different projects, whether it's milestone-based templates, whether it's full Microsoft project kind of heavyweight templates, whether it's even agile templates, depending on type of work that's going on. What is the process to automate task updates and approvals, so we're not running around manually reconciling this information? How do we start to abstract at the milestone level for planning and tracking, so we can really start to deal with one of the biggest challenges out here that I still see today, which is the discrepancy in standards or capabilities of different project managers, from the accidental occasional project manager through to the guy that has the 10 letters behind his name and is fully certified, and that's what he or she does. Baseline snapshotting, and a very important one that everyone struggles with today, is now how do we start to really in scale manage and visualize cross-project dependencies. In Insight, again, we're bringing everything together. How do we start to harmonize across key deliverables and schedules in a bimodal world? Agile, traditional, waterfall, more advanced techniques like critical path analysis, now being able to drive broader dependencies. Now in our model we have projects and programs and potentially non-project activities, driving dependencies across all the activities that are occurring, ability to look at scope change from a change request perspective. And we'll look a little bit at roadmaps in a second, but the ability to drive what we call entity-based roadmaps, visualizing macro information between projects and programs, and portfolio-based roadmaps across projects and programs, more strategic portfolio level roadmaps. As we move into Connect and we have that more expansive model, now we're really looking at driving dependencies across everything, how this project key milestone impacts an application go live or a product go live or a process. I mean, now we have a completely connected environment where we can see the cause and effects across any enterprise investment or any enterprise portfolio, and more expansive roadmaps, which we'll look at in a second, entity-based, portfolio-based strategic roadmaps across all portfolios, current state, future state, architecture roadmaps. Now roadmaps are kind of key, seem to be a big buzz at the moment, because I see them more as macro schedule and see them being able to really harmonize all investment decisions and allow you to see the impact of portfolio dependencies from a time perspective. This is just an example of what we call an entity-based roadmap. It's based on actually a project here, so a project's on the bottom, but a project in that connected world could be impacting many other portfolios. In fact, we see enterprise portfolio management primarily as a discipline to allow you to understand cross-portfolio dependencies to enhance decision making. So with that in mind, this is a project. Look, the bottom thing on the bottom bar here is actually a project, and this is the 6 degrees of separation that this project has with other entities from other enterprise portfolios. These are the projects and dependencies between projects, the program that it supports, the application it may be automating, or the top-down portfolio or capability it may be supporting. So bringing everything together, and can easily see the cause and effect across all portfolios if there's delay or other things. As you move into more strategic-based portfolio roadmaps, and there's many ways you can generate these, but again, rendering that dependency information, this time looking at key investments, initiatives, broken down by strategic imperative. Lots of different ways that you can generate and visualize and communicate both delivery timelines and the impact of change. Now, I could go on because there's so many of these, but this is kind of moving out of projects and programs now into making decisions on related portfolios. This happens to be an application portfolio, looking at a decommission schedule based on key apps broken down by the capabilities that they're supporting. So obviously, if you're going to retire an app, it's going to result in a project. So this is another example where decisions on other portfolios through roadmaps feed that overall demand management process. So again, I kind of said we're going to keep this pretty high level, and the idea really was to give examples or summarize the VIC framework, but give examples of how that plays out by looking at least 4 of those capabilities. But there are only 4 out of all the capabilities that are shown here. But remember the sort of core tenets of this framework: visibility, getting foundational control across projects; insight, starting to treat projects and programs as business investments and garnering both the financial and strategic insights to make quicker, better, faster decisions. And then the all-important piece, certainly for those of you that see the capability-driven framework or want your PMO to be a facilitator or orchestrator of business transformation, a seat at the table in those important decisions. The connect, knowing that you're not just managing projects and programs, that you're impacting other portfolios, and the need to understand those portfolio relationships and connections to be able to orchestrate change across the organization. So what would I recommend now? I mean, the first thing you could do is look at understanding where are you now, right? So what our team would normally do is come in, conduct what we call a VIC assessment to understand where you are today. which of those level 3 capabilities have you enabled to a good degree, what's outstanding. We even have a survey here, and the link is at the bottom, which basically will help generate a VIC maturity score, which will pinpoint roughly where you are on this continuum. Okay, it's a high-level survey, so you still need to get the devil's in the details, but still, are you in visibility, are you in insight? You know, can you just sit back and relax because you've already reached connect and things are looking good? So feel free to take the survey, see what your score is, or feel free to engage us, you know, even in a sort of lightweight consultative approach or a full VIC assessment, where we can come in, pinpoint where you are today, but step 2, start to build a phase roadmap. And let's face it, this is not a big bang. To get from visibility to connect, you know, is going to be a journey. So what would that roadmap look like for you? And this is what the team does, is break it down into phases based on what you're looking to achieve. Again, remember that you don't have to do everything in visibility before going to insight, before going to connect. I often have, you know, organizations, for example, that are putting lightweight visibility in while integrating project and technology portfolios, for example. So drawing down from both capabilities that fall part of visibility and connect in this example. So what would we consider to be a full capability selected in a stage, partial or not included, and how that plays out across multiple phases based on what you are looking to achieve, based on how you want that enterprise portfolio management function to work within your organization. So with that in mind, I think we've about 5 minutes or so to spare. I'll throw it out there again, you know, the opportunity here to engage with us, to just talk about this. If you'll just reach out at the same time, just talk through this. We can conduct that full PPM assessment or build that roadmap. And there's many other things that the UMT360 team can help with. And you know, go to our website, UMT360.com, you know, to learn about all the services, additional technology that we provide. So with that, I want to thank you for your time today. Encourage you to look out for upcoming webcasts. I think we've got some webcasts coming, a variety of subjects, including Agile, waterfall, bimodal realities, and other things like that. But as said, let's look at the Q&A now and answer any questions that may be there. So feel free to post questions now. I can see some questions coming in. So kind of usual ones around, are the slides available? Yeah, they will be shipped to the attendees PDF format at some point over the next few days. A question around you know, what's the sort of average cost of a phase? It's too difficult to say. I mean, it can be rapid to it really is based on what's included. You know, and where you are today. But you know, what we tend to do as a consulting team is we operate an agile implementation approach. So normally broken down into 2-3 month chunks, and you can achieve quite a bit, you know, within each of those 3-month increments. You know, so bite off a good chunk of visibility. And then move into, you know, some of the more meatier capabilities that we positioned in Insight and beyond. So what is your approach to convince a CIO level management when they don't see the ROI of providing even Insight level information? Well, I'm not finding that too much of a problem anymore, but especially sort of CIO level management. I think, you know, a lot has changed in the last few years. You know, even if you look at now the importance in a lot of CIOs' minds of IT financial management, right? Because they have to treat their business more as a business and communicate in a way that the business expects to see numbers and other things. So I do think though, that there is a danger today, going back to the perception of the PMO that we touched on in one of the first slides, that CIOs, don't see necessarily the criticality of the PPM discipline, and in turn, the guardians of that discipline being the PMO, because they see it more as that administrative, execution-orientated thing. Now, when I think about PPM today, it is 40% of what orchestrating business transformation is. It is your transformation discipline. It's something that not just the PPM community rely on now. Enterprise architects, business architects, strategic planning, everyone is wanting information from PPM. So one way of dealing with that is really going to the challenge that many CIOs face, which is how to better partner with the business, how to better align technology roadmaps and spend with business priorities, how to move to more of a holistic, capability-driven approach, and how PPM is an integral part of the toolkit that you will need to successfully not just deliver transformation, but plan, sequence, and then deliver and measure transformation. Another one here. Advice on PMO maturity progressing in a decentralized project management organization. So I probably need a little bit more on that, but I mean, obviously PMO structures are key here. In a completely decentralized organization, you really have to look at where to start, right? The obvious thing to me to say is start with the basics, right? If visibility is about getting the foundational controls, you need to get visibility across projects. Start there. Move from decentralized into some kind of centralized, consolidated way of working, even if it's just putting the controls in place to get visibility across execution, something I call plan manage, so not even dealing with demand management and those kind of approval processes. So it's about picking the right sub-capability or sub-capabilities to start with, right? That's why we're pretty focused here on not making this a sequential visibility, insight, and connect. For example, it may well be that bringing all the projects together across a business or multiple departments in a business, the political hurdles that brings to bear are just insurmountable. So actually establishing more of an enterprise function that's looking at things like capital stewardship and reallocation and things like that, without touching some of the sort of underlying mechanics of execution, can still show value, which will then fuel future efforts or willingness to underpin that with some of the capabilities to really bring standardization to project management and consolidation of the projects themselves. So with that, we'll respond to any other questions as they come in. But with that, we're on the top of the hour. I want to thank everyone for their time today. Please provide feedback, and please look out for the next webcast on our agenda. Thanks again.